In this video, guys, I want to talk a little bit about we're going to be moving to a foreign country, and so I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of study and a lot of work, and I interviewed some folks about whether we should rent or sell our house in the United States. This video is going to focus on the possibility of renting our home while we're living in another country. Let me introduce you guys to Jesse Pierce. He's the business development manager for Real Properties Management, First Choice, based out of Arkansas. And that's where we live, is in Arkansas. And I wanted to visit with him today about the possibility of turning our home into a rental property versus selling it outright when we move to the Philippines. So he's an expert in this field, and he was gracious enough to give me a couple of hours of his time where him and I talked about the nuts and the bolts and all the things that I could come up with, questions to ask him about what does it mean to have and to own rental property, and how does it relate to the situation if you're going to be living overseas. So if you will, join me as we learn and discuss what it's like to become property managers, so to speak. So Jesse actually provided me these questions that we're going to go over, which very closely paralleled the questions I had already set up to talk to him about. And one of the big questions was, what services did his company offer? So for me, being that we're going to live overseas, I am truly looking for a full service company. Somebody will handle the marketing, the rental collection, any maintenance. They have a maintenance service company with them. Do the inspections, follow up, administer their background checks. I truly am looking for a management company that I am 100% hands off. They process everything, they handle everything, and then maybe they deposit the money into the account every month, and I don't have to worry about it. That's what I'm looking for living so far away. I also was curious about, how big of a company are they? How many units do they run? I've talked to a couple of smaller companies that had 2 or 3 pieces of property, and I've talked to some that had, one had almost 1,000 pieces of property locally. So, and this one's a middle-sized one. So I was curious that I didn't want one too big because I thought my property could get lost in the shuffle, and I definitely didn't want one too small because, my logic and fear was the smaller companies, one, would not be able to handle the services. Maybe they don't have the experience to find renters, qualified renters, and all of those things. So there's some pros and cons about too big, too small that you guys have to give a little bit of thought to. So here's an interesting question that I truly hadn't really gave very much thought to. What experience did your company owner have in managing rentals? And when I got talking to them about this, what he's meaning is this property management company managing rental properties? Are they also selling properties? What are they doing? What is their primary focus? How long have they been doing it? Do they have a system in place? Do they have a web portal in place? A background screening process in place? So those are very important questions to ask. How to determine rent for your property? So this was a good question. For me, I asked 4 or 5 different companies, look, how much do you think we could get for our property here? And I got different answers within about $300 to $400. I had a rough estimate in my head what I thought it would go for. You want a company, some companies just kind of said, well, we think it'd be this, we think it could be that, it could be that. But A good management company is going to be able to say, well, let me tell you how we came to that dollar amount. How we came to that is we looked up all of the rentals around your property, your house, your neighborhood, your town, your square footage, and we came up with a calculation based on how fast the properties were being rented versus how fast or how long they were sitting on the market. That's how we do it. And I like that because I like the data driven analysis. The other thing to keep in mind, which I liked in talking to them, and is yes, you could price your house. Let's say you got a house that would rent for $1,800 a month is the recommended rent. So yeah, could you put it at $2,000 a month in hopes of getting a little bit more money? Absolutely. But if it sits on the market empty with no renters in it, you're really not making any money. You're losing money. So a good company is going to price your house competitively on the rental market. So our next question is real pretty straightforward, I think. Are you an active real estate investor? So we're asking this company, do they actively invest into real estate property, or are they truly just a property management company? Now, I thought before I got started in this process, I wanted a company that focused on property management only. But as I got to studying this and talking to people, I came to figure out and to learn that the companies that managed properties and also invested into the properties or into property had a better understanding of the market overall. Not only the for sale market, the sell market, but for us, the rental market. If they understand what's going on in the market overall, they're going to be able to better competitively price your house, which is going to maximize the dollars for me, which is what I want. So I've asked all of these companies, can I cancel my management contract? Now, I had a couple of them tell me, no, you're going to sign a year lease, a 2-year contract with us, and this is the way it is. I've had others said, oh yeah, sure, and I would have follow up with that and say, well, do you have a written policy about it? And some did and some didn't. I think a good company has a written policy about how you can break off your agreement with them. Now, to me, logic only stands that if you have a renter in your house and it's a 12-month lease and you got a property management company, it's probably wise and best to finish out that term before you switch property management companies. But I had a couple of companies say, well, no, that's not true in our case. If you truly don't like our service, you let us know in writing and we will disengage managing your property and turn it over to another company. 4 months to go on a 1-year lease, and I was dissatisfied with my company, I would finish them out and then I would find another company. All right, so let's get into management fees a little bit. Now, what I found was they vary very, very much from each different company I talked to. But here's some commonalities. One, everybody had kind of like initial one-time startup fee to work with the company. It might range from $100 to $300. There was also a couple of them had it where they also needed half of the first month's rent. So if your house is renting for $2,000, then they get the first $1,000 off of your property for that month. And therefore, after, a lot of them would collect anywhere from 10 to 25% off of the gross $2,000. So that was pretty common around there. I think 25% is high. And then, of course, there's some other miscellaneous fees, such as home inspection fees. They would come in and do inspections, make sure your property's taken care of. You're going to be charged for that. If there's any maintenance that has to be done, you're going to be charged for that. The key with that is how much are they going to charge you for labor per hour? So a good company, what I kind of found was if they have dedicated maintenance personnel, they'll pass those savings on to you, the homeowner. If they got a subcontracted out, if you got a small mom and pop company or who subcontracts everything out to, Billy Bob, then it may cost you a whole lot more money. So that's really, really important to nail down those fees, those expenditures. And then, of course, your capital improvement fund. I talked to a couple of them, and they were talking about anywhere from 5 to 15% of the monthly should go into a fund that would be accessible to pay for property damages and repairs. The good news is if you don't spend it all, it comes back to you as the homeowner as profit. One of the other questions that I think is very important, if you hire a company and you agree to a flat rate, even when your house is empty, you're still paying the flat rate. If I agree to $200 a month on my $2,000 house, no matter what, well, when it's empty, they still get their money. But if it's on a percentage basis of the gross of your rent, it is most important to the property management company to make sure your house is being rented or they don't get any monthly money. So you want to go with a percentage-based system, in my opinion. All right, so we touched a little bit on miscellaneous fees. So, yeah, the question is, what are all of the fees? You need to be very clear. And yes, there's going to be lots of little miscellaneous fees. So make sure that you understand that. So let's move on to question number 10. If I want to list my property, if I want to sell it, do I have to sell it with you? What I found was some companies, property management companies, wanted an exclusive right to sell my house if I decided to sell it, which I thought was absurd. A good one is going to recognize that you have a contract with them to manage your property, not to sell your property. So if we're living overseas and our house is being rented for a year, and in a year I go, well, look, for sure we're not coming back. Why don't we go ahead and sell it? Some of these companies said, oh, you got to sell it with me. A good one is going to say, well, you find the real estate people that you're happy with. In my opinion, a good property management company is not really in the real estate selling business. They may be in the real estate investment building a business where they're buying investment property, but they're not turning them over or flipping them to sell. So that's what I was looking for. One that said, look, where our focus is property management and the management of your house, not just gigantic large apartment complexes, but individual houses. So just keep that in mind a little bit. You don't want to be forced to list your house with people that you don't want to. So questions 11 and 12 here kind of go together for me. I was really curious about wanting a company that has a web portal or a website for property owners and for renters. I really want one that's going to have the renters automatically direct deposit their rent into an account. So therefore, there's less hassle and less drama. It's easier for the company to get the rent money. And of course, they do background checks, credit checks, all of that stuff. But I thought it was really important to have a website where somebody can go on, you log on, you can see everything that somebody paid, when it was paid. If you're the renter, the same thing. How to collect rent from your tenants? Online. Online is the way to go. In today's world, I don't know, how many people have checks, but I didn't like the concept of somebody sending me a check or mailing the checks in or do any of that. I truly wanted it to be an internet-based porthole website, whatever you want to call it, for every bit of money management, including the expenditures that the property management company is going to have. So you're going to want one that's going to be able to detail everything. Today, they went out to my house and fixed a ceiling fan. I was charged this much, and here's the invoice for it. And it goes into this column so that I can see that every day I wanted to look at it. So for me, for collecting rent and managing things, you got to have a web-based company. So number 13, I asked this question to every one of them. Said, how do you manage my property? Do you drive by my property? What do you do so that you're keeping an eyeball on my investment, which is my house? Now, most of them said, yeah, we do inspections when somebody moves in and moves out. We photograph the house. We do any needed repairs, little touch-ups before the new people come in. But there was a good number of them that didn't do any inspections in between. I did find a few of them that said, yeah, we will do inspections like every 6 months. And you're talking about for a 1-year lease, which I thought was great. They do charge you for these. It could be anywhere from $59.99 to $150 for these inspections. And of course, you also want a company that's very proactive. So let's say if they're coming in to fix that ceiling fan, when they come in, maybe they'll take a few minutes and look around to make sure there's not anything, else wrong or anything that's going on that would cause us concern. So that's kind of important. What do you feel comfortable with? How they going to check up on your investment? 14, do you offer eviction warranty? So how is this going to happen? And I ask this to every one of them. What are you going to do if you got to kick somebody out? A lot of them said we have a in-house attorney, or they sub it out, but they have a process in place that will do after 3 days, they get a late fee. After 15 days or 10 days, depending on, they get a notice of eviction, telling them they got 30 days to be out of the house, and pretty standard. But what was important to me was that I didn't have to do any of it. I don't have to go to the courthouse. I didn't have to call the sheriff to come out and evict somebody out of my house. The property management company handles that 100%. Now, you maybe get charged for that, all right, which kind of stinks, but that's the way it is. So when you look at this, ask those questions. Who's going to do the eviction? How you're going to do it? What are the rules about late payments? Do they have a policy to where they can work with somebody? And you can work with your property management company to figure out what you are comfortable with. A little bit of a tiny bit follow-up question on this was, can I put in guidelines for my property since we are a non-smoking house? Can I say that don't rent to smokers? And they all said, absolutely. Where we live at, you can clearly state you don't want smokers or you don't want pets. We have a pet-friendly house, and they all told me that I can rent my property faster and for a little bit more money because I allow small pets. Now, they will do a pet fee. One thing I liked was some of the companies said, yeah, we get a pet deposit. And then others said we get a pet deposit plus we might charge them an extra $25 in rent per month per dogs with like a 2-dog limit. I like that one. I like the thought you're going to collect a little bit more rent for me, off of the animals. Now, if they violate those are issues that can come up that can warrant a eviction process, which the property management company needs to handle, not me. So I find this a interesting question. How do you market your properties? So how's that property management company going to find qualified, good renters for my property? We live in an area that's very blessed economically, meaning that there's a high demand for rental properties and home purchasing here. So, but most of them basically said, well, we'll just put it out on social media, which seems to be the thing these days. But a couple of them that really seem to have it together said, yes, we do social media, we do our webpage, but we also have relationships that we built with real estate agents and other corporations. And I'll just use an example. Walmart, maybe. Walmart brings in a lot of new employees into our part of the country here. What I liked was the couple of companies that I talked to who said, look, we have a relationship with Walmart who will recommend our company to these new hires that are moving here from Tennessee or Chicago or California, so they can help find a piece of property to rent while they take their time looking for a new house to buy. So I kind of like that. So you're going to want somebody that does social media, that also has their fingers in the corporation world, the real estate companies. Any avenues is better for you. One of the burning questions that we need to ask and be concerned about is this: how long do your properties typically sit empty? That was my concern. My concern of these companies is, I want to know, do you have any properties right now that are empty, and how long have they been sitting empty? So, and this is kind of where the marketing or the market analysis for the dollar amount of rent you're going to be charging helps. Remember, I touched on that if you're charging $2,000 a month in rent, but your property is only worth $1,800 a month in rent, when it comes vacant, it's going to sit on the market a little bit longer. I was really hoping not to hear anything more than a month at a time. And one of the good ones here, Real Property Management First Choice, actually went out and showed me data of these houses that are sitting on the market way too long, and and they're getting too high of a rent, or they're asking too high of a rent. So I think that's important, that you have a company that understands the market so that your house does not sit on the market very long. And then, of course, this also plays into your contract with them. This is why having a contract to where that you can break at any time is important. So if, let's say, I have a contract, they get a lease in here, a renter, they're gone in 6 months. They have to end the lease or break the lease, and they're gone in 6 months. And my house is sitting empty for a couple months. Well, I'm going to terminate that real estate, that property management company, because they're not re-renting my property. So we want to have it to where we, the homeowner, gets the best of everything. We keep renters in, we keep money coming in a month, and if it's not working, we can terminate the property management company and find another one who will be able to rent our house and keep it rented. Number 17 is a kind of a curious question for me that I asked, is how do you judge? So what are your income and screening requirements? What all of them said is, yeah, we do a background check or we do a credit check. And I think that's great, but a couple of these smaller ones kind of said it with a wink and nod. They fill out an application and we do a credit check. Here's something to keep in mind about credit checks and companies. So it's a service that these companies have to provide. So if you have a really small company who's running on a shoestring budget, are they really doing the full background check necessary versus a mid-sized or large company who's going to be able to have those funds and a system in place to do a thorough background check? That's important. We want them to evaluate their finances to make sure that this is affordable piece of property for them to rent, and that their credit score is high enough, and that they don't have any derogatory, they haven't been evicted, they haven't been through bankruptcy. Whatever these things are, these criteria that you want to put on that, you work with your property management company to come up with that. But they all have kind of a boilerplate system that says, look, we expect them to have a credit score of 750 or better because your house is really nice and it's in this financial bracket. We talked a tiny bit about the maintenance and repairs. Yeah, I like the companies that had an in-house maintenance team versus subcontracting it out to like Handyman Connections or those other groups of people that are out there looking for jobs. So I wanted one that truly has in-house professionals and relationships. And here's why. For me, it's going to be very important, one, that if they send a plumber or electrician to my house to do work, I want to be done by a licensed professional. I also want them to have plenty of liability insurance for doing the work on my property. So if they mess up and burn my house down, then, that $1 million bond that they have to be licensed in our state, well, that comes into play. So I think those are things important. One thing I like is a property management company that has back to that online system. I want my renters or my tenant to be able to go online and say, look, the ceiling fan is wobbly. Report it. It gets into the system. It gets logged into the system. The property management schedules it, takes care of it, then reports back to me on the website, the portal, letting me know what happened, when it happened, and why it happened, and how much it cost. Number 19 here talks a little bit about, your updates on your property. For me, being overseas, this is something that worried me. One, I want to be hands off. I want a property management company that's going to handle things, but that doesn't mean I don't want to know anything about my property. So when there is a hot water tank goes out, I want to know about it. Now, I want the property management company to handle it, but I want to know about it. What I liked was the ones who said, look, you will get email notifications. Everything will go into your side of the website where you log in and you can see all the data, but we'll send you updates. And anytime you want, we can Skype call and have a conversation about anything that's irritating you, bugging you, or anything that's concerning you. The other thing I liked was some of the smaller ones didn't have this feature, but some of the mid-size and bigger ones would say, look, we're going to put a $300 expenditure flag on the account, meaning if we have to spend more than $300 to repair your property, you're going to be notified, and you will have to approve that investment. So if they need a $500 water heater, that's $200 over, they're going to have to ask me for permission to do that. Now, you can prearrange that and say, look, but they're going to be generous and courteous enough and respectful enough to me to ask me first. The other thing I wanted to clarify with these companies is, who is this lease with? Is it with me or is it the property management company? And I want it to be with the property management company because that's going to give them the authority to rent, background check. If they need to evict somebody, it's going to give them the power to do all of that. It's going to give them power to manage my property. If I need them to pay the POA dues every year, well, I can have that set up as part of this. If your house is debt-free, you can even set it up to where they pay your taxes on your house and your insurance. But of course, if you're carrying a mortgage, all of that's part of your mortgage payment as it is, so that's really not a big deal. So in talking about fees a little bit for Real Property Management, this is Real Property Management, the company that sent us the questions, and who gave me 3 hours of their time about my house now. So they have a new account fee of $299, 50% of the first months. That's for your first lease, like your first 1 year lease. After that, if you do a second lease, it's only $149, no new account fee, no 50%. You just pay the $149 and you continue on in the next year. Now, they recommended a 5% capital improvement fund. Of course, remember that if that's not used, the money comes back to you, so to speak, back into your pocket as profit. And then they do biannual inspections at $129 each. So let's talk a little bit about annual expenditures and carrying costs. So one way to break this down into simple figures is what I look at as your carrying cost is your mortgage payment, your home insurance and tax, and the POA dues if you have those. So this is going to be one of your major columns, one of your major expenses, in figuring out how much profit you're going to be able to make if you turn your house into a rental property. So keep this in mind in your head about your own personal house. So let's look at our year one numbers. All right, so we're going to think about it this way. Our monthly income is going to be $2,000 a month as an example. That gives us what, 24,000 a year. So you got your first time expenses that I showed you on the slide a couple slides back. Your first year is going to be 2759. Remember, that's the half the rent, the 10%, the 5%, all of those things factored in there. So then you have your carrying cost, which is your mortgage and insurance, remember? And then, so your year one taxable total, because remember, you got to pay taxes when you do this, because it's going to be considered revenue because it's not your primary home. So you got maybe $7,041 in taxable income there. So you take away your 25% to the government, that's left you with a year one net income of about $5,280. Now plug in your own numbers into this. How much that management company is going to charge you, how much your carrying costs, which are fees that you know that you have to deal with whether you live in your house or not. You figure out what your year one taxable totals are, your taxes, your net income, and then you can divide your year one net income by 12 to get how much money you would make every month to decide if it's really worth through this or if you would just want to sell your house outright. Because you may be better off to do that, take it all at once and do what you want with it. My opinion is this: if you can clear about $600 to $700 a month profit, clear, good, clean profit from doing a property management company, and you live in an area where your home values are going up every year by at least 3%, 4%, 5%, then maybe it's worth having your house as a rental property managed by a rental company. All right, so let's wrap up this video. The key takeaways I hope you get is, one, you got to ask a lot of questions, and you need to shop around. If you're thinking about using your house as rental property while you're living overseas or maybe even just 2 states away, there's a lot of questions to ask. There's a lot of companies out there that do this, so definitely search around. There's a couple things I wouldn't do. I wouldn't let a friend manage your property for you, or a family member, or anything like that. I think that's probably not a good plan overall. So just keep that in mind. Now, something we didn't touch on, but I want to touch on a little bit here is I studied about using my house as like an Airbnb while I'm gone. Now, that sounds really good because you can make a whole lot more revenue. But the problem with that is you're going to have somebody manage the day-to-day house. When your guests check out, they got to clean it and get it ready and do all of that. So it may sound like you make a whole lot more money per day renting your house, but there's a lot more hassles involved, a lot more risk involved in them tearing up your house versus finding somebody who's going to stay in your house for a year and treat it like their home. When I really got looking and studying in that, I didn't see that as a good solution. I also talked to a lot of these folks about, well, should I leave my house furnished or partly furnished? And they all said no, because folks that want to come and rent a house for a year, they're going to bring their own belongings. Now, if somebody's coming into an area for a month and renting in like an executive apartment that's fully furnished, that's different. It's a temporary housing. But most people that rent long-term are going to want to bring their own belongings. That I don't think you want to keep your house furnished. And a couple of them told me absolutely not. They won't take my house if it is furnished. What I liked was a couple of the companies that seemed to really have it together was like, look, we are going to lease your house. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to sell it. We're not going to Airbnb it. That's not what we do. It's not what we're going to do. We focus on leasing your house to people for a year, and that's how we all make money. And I like that. I like that. So I think that's a good way to be. So just remember, this is all my opinion, what I think, what I've researched. I hope you've made it this far in the video. If you have, please like, subscribe, share, give us a thumbs up. And please go out there and do your own research, talk to people, and ask questions. I will tell you, I have not made up my answer yet. I have looked at all the numbers. I know exactly how much a month profit we would make, which isn't a lot. So I have not determined whether we're going to sell our house, which I am leaning towards, versus renting it. But after I went through this process and did a lot of studying, it gave me a lot of food for thought. But I am definitely still leaning towards selling our property, but I have not made up my mind yet. So, guys, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let us know. We greatly appreciate you. And thank you for making it this long.